Elon Musk's dream is to colonize Mars and have it as a backup planet just in case things don't go very well here in Earth. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos wants to tap into the unlimited resources of Mars while preserving the Earth to stay livable. Space tourism is just what it sounds like. It is a space travel for the average man or woman, not only the NASA-trained astronauts. To become a space tourist, you will not need any engineering or physics degree, as a fully trained crew will be with you during the whole flight. This new and exciting kind of tourism seeks to give tourists the ability to become astronauts. Space tourists will experience space travel for recreational, leisure, or even business purposes. In the 1960s, people had the perception that, whenever it happened, space tourism would be an orbiting hotel or a trip to the moon. Even though looking out the window of your orbiting hotel sounds really cool, these are not the types of space tourism major companies have been working on. Companies like Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and the well-known SpaceX are the leaders changing the rocket business. But before we jump to discuss into what each of these companies are working on, we need to understand that there are several types of space tourism, and not all of them are planning on taking you to deep space. Imagine you throw a tennis ball straight up into the air. The ball will go very fast at the beginning, but as time passes, the ball will reach a stop for an instant. Then, the ball will start falling back to you. This is how suborbital spaceflight works. Tourists on board a spacecraft will be launched straight into the sky. The spacecraft will fly up to apogee at approximately 100 kilometers and then fall back to Earth. To put this into perspective, commercial airplanes fly at about 35,000 feet above sea level. At the very top, space tourists will experience up to 6 minutes of weightlessness. But it will not be high enough to enter the Earth orbit like a satellite or the International Space Station. Some people think that they will experience zero gravity, but that is not technically true. A small amount of gravity can be found everywhere in space. Gravity is what holds the moon in orbit around Earth. Gravity, however, does become weaker with distance. That's why a spacecraft can go far enough from Earth that a person inside will feel very little gravity. Now, suborbital spaceflights can be higher than our next type of space tourism. Suborbital spaceflights can be higher than orbital spaceflights, since the key to reaching orbit is velocity and not altitude. When people talk about orbital spaceflight, they are very likely referring to the low Earth orbit flight. The low Earth orbit goes up to an altitude of 2,000 kilometers. This might be a bit difficult to visualize, so let me put this into perspective. We start at sea level located at 0 kilometers. Sputnik is located at an altitude of 215 kilometers. The International Space Station is located at an altitude of around 390 kilometers. And the Moon is located at a distance of 384,000 kilometers from Earth. Now, imagine we see Earth with a ridiculously tall mountain rising from it. The mountain, as Isaac Newton first described, has a cannon at its top. If we fire the cannon horizontally, it will strike the Earth. But if we fire the cannon fast enough, at a specific speed, the curvature of its path due to gravity will match the curvature of the Earth. The projectile will fall around the Earth, becoming an Earth-orbiting satellite. The same happens with a spacecraft. In an orbital spaceflight, a spacecraft must be on a free trajectory at above 100 kilometers, the boundary of space. Space tourists on an orbital spaceflight will remain in space orbiting the Earth at least once. Orbital spaceflights are more challenging than suborbital, but they do offer a more space-like experience for tourists. A lunar spaceflight is what people in the 60s thought space tourism will be in the future. A circumlunar free return trajectory around the moon is the top level of tourism a person can experience in space. In this type of space tourism, the spacecraft will make a figure 8 around the Earth and Moon when plotted in a coordinate system. Tourists on a lunar spaceflight can expect it to last 6 to 8 days. As this type of spaceflight is more complicated, I will explain how it works later in the video. After the United States completed the moon landing, there was a perception that the United States had won the space race and that there wasn't anything else to be done in space. Consequently, Congress cut funding for NASA in the 70s. The dreams of space tourism shattered. But in the late 90s, a pair of entrepreneurs created the X Prize. The X Prize was a standing offer of $10 million to the first private organization that created a reusable spacecraft. In 2004, the prize was won by a guy who flew his spaceplane to an altitude of more than 100 kilometers. The X Prize ignited the space tourism back again, opening an opportunity for a few different companies to pioneer space tourism. A well-known company is probably Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic, which has been talking about taking civilians to space for years now. Be clear that even though they talk about taking civilians to space, they're only working toward suborbital space travel. Virgin Galactic requires an upfront deposit of $250,000. Virgin Galactic operates the reusable Spaceship Two space flight system. Virgin Galactic flight path is as follows. It consists of a custom-built carrier aircraft and Spaceship Two, the world's first passenger spaceship to be built by a private company and operated in commercial service. A couple of minutes after the spaceflight starts, Spaceship Two and White Knight 2 separate. The rocket motor of Spaceship Two ignites and it starts the vertical climb. Spaceship Two will then reach maximum altitude and passengers experience microgravity. Tourists will spend several minutes floating in zero gravity. Spaceship Two will prepare for re-entry the Earth's atmosphere, gliding its way home. The total trip time will last between 90 minutes and 2 hours. There's also Blue Origin, which was founded by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Blue Origin plans to send up to 6 passengers on a short journey to space aboard the New Shepard. The New Shepard is the name of the capsule at the top of the 60-foot rocket. Blue Origin flight path is as follows. New Shepard will start its liftoff in the West Texas launch site. Just before reaching an altitude of 100 kilometers, the capsule detaches and continues several miles toward the sky. While the capsule continues on free flight, the booster rocket brakes deploy. After a few minutes of weightlessness, the capsule gradually falls back to Earth. The thing with Blue Origin is that they tend to keep things a secret, like the cost per ticket, which has not been announced yet. And similar to Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin only plans to perform suborbital flights. From takeoff to landing, the trip is expected to last about 10 minutes. The other company that is pioneering space travel is SpaceX, headed by tycoon Elon Musk. SpaceX plans to send passengers into Earth and lunar orbit. A journey like this will mark humanity's first journey to the moon since the last Apollo in 1972. SpaceX plans to use its famous Starship spacecraft and Super Heavy rocket represent a fully reusable transportation system designed to carry both crew and cargo to Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Reusability allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drive down the cost of space access. A SpaceX flight path will be as follows. Starship and Super Heavy will lift off, and after burning for approximately 3 minutes, Super Heavy separates from Starship and returns back to Earth, while Starship continues to orbit. After several maneuvers, Starship will be close to the moon, and a space tourist on board will be able to closely inspect the moon's surface. After an amazing life-changing experience, Starship will begin its return to Earth, orienting itself into a vertical position and finalizing at the landing pad. Elon said that the Starship will be ready for an unpiloted trip to Mars in 2022, and a crew flight will follow in 2024. But SpaceX is not only looking at lunar spaceflight. SpaceX is also specializing in Earth-to-Earth transportation. Yes, Earth-to-Earth transportation. Starship will fly up to orbit and begin the long-distance trips. Imagine most journeys will take less than 30 minutes, with access to anywhere in the world in an hour or less. It is all fun and games talking about space tourism, but these billionaires want more than a trip around the moon. Elon Musk's dream is to colonize Mars and have it as a backup planet just in case things don't go very well here in Earth. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos wants to tap into the unlimited resources of Mars while preserving the Earth to stay livable. But enough about Mars, let's go back to space tourism. The reality of space tourism is that not anyone will be able to fly. And the main reason behind is that it is very expensive. With seats on a SpaceX flight going at around 55 million each, space tourism into low Earth orbit doesn't seem like a sustainable source of revenue for any orbital spaceflight company. There aren't enough rich people with that kind of money to burn. Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin are so far focused only on suborbital flights that last a few minutes and are much cheaper when compared to SpaceX. And when you think about it, what SpaceX is offering is very different from what Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin offer. There is no doubt we, the mortals, might be able to become a space tourist in an affordable future. The experts say the space tourism industry will grow into the 1 trillion economy at some point in the future. But until then, let's leave it for the ultra-rich.